Welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method podcast. I'm joined by some women from the Kickass community, and we are delving into this September, beginning of September, in on a mindset thing. And I'm deliberately talking here about motivation. Motivation won't save you, and what will? I often hear people talking all the time in my Instagram DMs, conversations I have about, I just don't feel motivated. I'm really struggling with motivation. And if you're waiting for motivation to turn up, you will often be waiting a very long time. So we're going to delve into what you should be relying on instead, which is going to help ensure that you get results, not just now, but for the rest of your life. So we'll be covering what is motivation, firstly, why it fails you in midlife, the science of why, in particular, the science of particularly in midlife with regards to your hormones, willpower, behavior change, and then the Kick-Ass Midlife Method, the SMART systems for sustainable results framework that I'm going to talk you through how to implement to make sure that you don't rely on willpower because, yeah, it's very difficult. So, what is motivation? There's kind of two types of motivation that kind of driven by outside pressure. So, for instance, for anyone on this program, it might be that initially if you joined before the summer, you could have been one of those extrinsic motivations could have been like, I want to get in great shape before going on some holiday. Now, there's nothing wrong with those motivations, but at some point or at some point season of the year, that's suddenly not an issue. So you need something beyond just thinking, I want to look good in a dress. You might look good in a dress, you reach that, and then you forget because you're looking at yourself in the mirror all the time, and slowly you're like that extrinsic motivation is not going to be enough. And then that intrinsic motivation, for instance, if you're in a gym, you start going to the gym more, or you're exercising at home, and you begin to really tune into how great it makes you feel. But both are totally valid and they're great things to have. But if it's something that you're going to try to rely on to keep you going, to following healthy behaviors, then that is going to falter at some point. And often, I very rarely myself get up when I go to the gym and want to go to the gym. Yeah, it doesn't happen actually. It's I don't rely on motivation. So yeah, there's loads and loads of studies and research done that shows it motivate. Motivation will spike at the start of the goal. In particular, right now, all of you are probably feeling really motivated. It's September. You've probably had a summer of lack of routine, and you're really motivated because you're like, right, I've put on a little bit of weight. Right, I'm gonna hit it hard. Your energy's back because you had a bit of time of work, and that's when energy, motivation is high. But as I'm sure all of you know from New Year, that doesn't really last very long. So why is motivation kind of a trap? And how many of you in the chat, how many of you do often say to yourself or say, I'm just not feeling motivated today. That's why I can't do something. And how many of you so give me a one if that's you. Well, give me a two if that is you, where you often wait for motivation to strike and feel like if you could just get motivation, it would all be perfect. And three, how many of you don't rely on motivation? Anyone else? Yeah. Yes. A bit of a mix. Bit of a mix, but lots of twos there, which is quite common. So the reason we're talking about why it's a trap to kind of focus on motivation is it's a real emotional, your emotions shift daily depending on your sleep and your stress and your workload, and in midlife even more so. In midlife, we're often, if we're got in a senior position at work, so therefore there's often more responsibility, family responsibilities in terms of older children, aging parents, that can add a whole nother element of something. When motivation dips because you're exhausted, then often you're setting yourself up for potential failure if you're hoping that motivation is going to carry you through. So, to create real results, your number one factor in creating real results is consistency in your nutrition and in your exercise. That trumps everything. It trumps like you trying to be progressive overload. You can progressively overload one week. Doesn't work if you progressively overload in week 4 and you've missed out two whole weeks. It's consistency. Therefore, to rely on motivation to keep that consistency is like game over. It's just not going to happen. So the trick is to think about your systems and processes that you stick to. Like without your non-negotiables, you set up these systems. Those systems and processes, when you're not used to them, will often fail to begin with, and you just keep having to bring yourself back to systems and processes that work for you, that you can stick to. And that's what's going to bring real results. Motivation harder as a midlife woman. So 4, do you think, anyone in the chat, number 4, if you think that you have found staying motivated harder as you've aged, and 5, actually, maybe anybody who thinks, actually, I find it easier. Ah, interesting. A 5 there, but mainly all 4s there. Um, so as a midlife woman, often, as I've said, there's like more reasons that motivations, that kind of relying on that kind of energized feeling of like, right, I feel really motivated. I'm going to hit my workouts. Right, I feel really motivated to hit my body fat loss goals, and I'm going to stick to my nutrition exactly. Is often harder for most women in midlife. You've got your hormonal fluctuations, so not only can it disrupts your sleep, which increases your irritability levels, lowers your cognitive control. Obviously, we all know that when we're tired, we become more emotional. It becomes much harder to do things. So, if your hormone fluctuations are going to add to that inability to sleep, we fluctuating estrogen linked to higher anxiety, which I know lots of us suffer from. Anxiety, so your brain is in overload, thinking about all these different things, is also going to drain your focus and make it harder to just focus on that, like motivation to do the thing that you said you're going to do. And then decision fatigue. So, there are studies that show that if you imagine your willpower is a bucket, and it's slowly being drained, there's only so much stuff you can do before it's completely drained and you're out of willpower. You're just exhausted and you can't do the thing that you said that you're going to do. So motivation versus systems. So, if you are senior in your work, or even if you're not senior in your work, but we all at work have had systems that we do things by, whether you run your own business, whatever it is, you wouldn't go into work. I'm not sure many of us have gone into work going, I feel really motivated every day. We go into work and we follow systems and processes to make sure we do the things we need to do to get the results we want. Really, you need to try and take the emotion out of your health and fitness and weight loss journey and treat it exactly the same. Um, yeah, so structure, clarity, and action. So it's like those things that you just repeat over and over again so you can take the decision fatigue out of the way. You don't have to think, do I want to do this now? Or instead, you're just like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm eating, this is the way I do it without having to think about it. So these are the steps. So number 1 is write down your goal. Now, you don't have to be start thinking about, oh, I'm like the pressure of a goal. What goals are really good for is they give you the pathway in which you've got to reach your goal. So it's really important that whatever you are trying to achieve, you write it down and you're specific. Now, for anybody who is joining us live now, for whom you've got those testing protocols that we're starting week 1 and you're going to do them again in week 6. For you, it could simply be, I want to say you did I don't know, sit to stand and you did 10 of them. You could just be like, if at the moment your overload is so much that all you want to focus on is you're going to hit 30 of those in 6 weeks. That's the goal. Then you know all you've got to do is follow the process, follow the exercise, and you will achieve that goal. There is no doubt that you will achieve that goal. That's the simplicity of having a goal and then you strategizing to do it. So if your goal is body composition, then be specific. What can you achieve? What do you want to achieve? Write it down. And when do you want to achieve it? Be really specific about it. And write it down somewhere where you can see it, so that you can remind yourself if it is a body composition goal and it feels absolutely huge and too much, break it down. Do one goal and then do little goals after that about how you can break it down into X number of weeks. And then schedule your workouts. Right. So number 6, have you scheduled? I know I schedule them for you in your diary if you're here with me live. If you're listening in later or now, I want to know whether you've scheduled your work-ins this week. 6 for yes, 7 for no. Not what I've scheduled. Have you sat down and thought, I'm definitely going to do those workouts at that time? So 6 for yes, 7 for no. Yeah. So mainly 6, some 7, and mainly 6, potentially because it's September and it's the first week of September. So it's about making sure that you always schedule your workouts and you prioritize them because you know that they make you feel good when you do them. It's very difficult when you're thinking about going to do your workout, even though you know that they make you feel good to go. So you just have to do it, and not think about it. It's a non-negotiable. You just go. So put it in your diary like you would a business meeting, like something that you couldn't move. Anything else in your diary. For some of us, in some ways, that could be helping to look after an aging parent, and it's something you would not move. Do the same for your workouts. Put it in. It doesn't move. Um, but then also be realistic. Choose times that actually, we're 45 plus here in this group. By now, we've got a very good knowledge, or should do, about our behaviour and knowing the times where we actually work for us in terms of our energy and lifestyle. So don't set a workout at 7 o'clock in the evening if you know damn well that you are terrible at doing workouts at 7 o'clock. I would actually, funny enough, I have now, but that's because my gym's right over the road, and I can do it, and I make it like a non-negotiable that I do it, and I also have a lot of running to fit in. But if you've got that knowledge, make sure that you do it with that knowledge in mind, and understand and accept that you are still going to get to that workout and you're going to say, oh, I don't really feel like I want to do this. And your brain will say, it's okay, you don't have to do it because actually you're really busy and you've got this, and this, and that to do. And you're probably right, you shouldn't do it because, yeah, you're going to drop the ball somewhere else. You've got to turn off that brain, the monkey brain, and go and do it. If you've set it in your diary in advance, and in your diary you've already said that's a non-negotiable, it's a non-negotiable. You just got to do it. Oh, have I? Yeah. And then your environment, you have to hack your environment for success. This is a really obvious one, which I'm sure you've heard a million times before, is you will eat what's available. If you've not gone shopping and therefore you've got some random bits of food in the cupboard, you will eat random bits of shit, basically. It's really simple. It's as simple as that. If your cupboard's full of biscuits, you'll eat the biscuits. If you've got wine in the fridge or in your wine rack, you will drink it. You know, follow, if you're going to have it in there, follow that 80-20% rule. Have like a tiny bit in the house. Don't have multi-packs of stuff. Even if you've got children, think about, your 80-20% rule. And then try to put the stuff that's the more nourishing things front and center. I'll give you an example. Last night, I was saying, God, I wish I bought some chocolate. Tom was going, why didn't you buy some chocolate from Waitrose? And I was like, because I knew I'd eat it. And instead, we had yogurt with some almonds and honey, and it was really nice. I didn't miss the chocolate at all. But I would definitely have eaten the chocolate if the chocolate was in the house. So, I'm a coach. I know that I know for myself that when I'm tired, 7, 8 o'clock at night, I would definitely have that chocolate. So, you know yourself and hack your environment. If you're going to have the chocolate because you've got kids in the house, at least put it up on a really high shelf. So you've got that extra bit of friction to have to get it. You've got to get a step ladder out to get it or something that's going to make, you do it for your kids and your grandchildren, but actually you're sitting in front of the sofa, maybe you can't be asked to do it. So just make it a little bit harder. And then this is such a big one, data over drama. So I cannot tell you how many women on this program have in their check-in forms said to me, "Oh God, I'm putting on weight. Oh look, I feel, yeah, I'm like, yeah, yeah, my tummy's changed. I'm fatter. I haven't done that well." And then I'll look and I'll be like, "There's been no photographs done that week. There's been no tape measurements done that week." And then I say, "Go away, do those, come back to me." And then they'll go, "Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah, I haven't, and actually I've lost 2 inches." Like, use your data. Take the emotion out of, you've got the process, you've signed up with this, with me, follow the process step by step and take the emotion out of it. If you have put on more body fat and lost a bit of muscle and it's gone up, no big deal. Reflect. You're tracking your food. Reflect back on your food. Look at it. Don't just wait for me to tell you what you've done wrong, what you've done right. You're tracking it. As you're tracking it, you should be thinking, "Oh wow, I just glugged that olive oil. I didn't actually realize that's probably 2 tablespoons. That's quite a lot." You know, think about it as you're doing it rather than just robotic like putting it in there. If you've put on weight, go back. I get quite a lot sometimes of, yeah, I keep going over on fat, or I can't quite hit my proteins. Go back, look and think, well, okay, if I had just taken that cheese out and had a different protein source on that day, and if I'd switched and not had 3 coffees that day with full fat milk, um, and maybe a whitefish instead of a salmon, I would have hit my fat goals and I would have hit my protein goals. So just look, because that's how you're going to learn, reflecting and thinking back on the week. And it's so simple, really easily, really quickly to go, "Oh, of course, I just did that. That's all I need to do is make a simple switch." It's not about doing massive radical restriction. It's just looking about switches. Obviously, I'm there to look at that and help, but you should also be taking responsibility for it as well. So the data gives you clarity, the feelings give you confusion. So use that kind of data that you're building up every day. And then another big thing is eat sufficiently. Restriction's not the answer. If you are not eating enough carbohydrates or you're under eating what I've set for you, it's likely you will be feeling knackered and really tired, and that's going to affect your energy to do stuff, your energy and motivation. For instance, in my ultra running, I can tell, I think I might have said this before, I can tell instantly when I run out of fuel because my brain goes dark. I'm in a dark place and it's all awful. And why the hell am I doing this? What have I done this for? And the minute I have food, it's all right again. But in the day-to-day life, we don't recognize that because we're not focused on like what's our energy doing, fuel in, I'm going to be energized. We're just running from one thing to another. Likelihood is if you're feeling down, you're feeling you've got no energy, look at your carbohydrates, make sure that you've actually eaten enough, not just towards the end of the day, right the way through, dripping through the whole of the day. Obviously, as we've said before on these podcasts, you absolutely need protein and adequate calories, including carbohydrates, to grow muscle. So, because you need that energy to do the exercise. So don't skimp on that. And then real world hacks for pitfalls for instance, food when you're out and about, like how do you do that? So fast lunches. So I don't like that a little symbol of a McDonald's in that fast lunch. So you pre-make your protein-rich bowls or grab supermarket versions. There are like, sushi boxes. My go-to is Tide Food organic soups. put loads in the freezer. If you know you're going to have a hellish day, get that Tide food soup out, and then have an additional protein that you can add to it, prawns, tofu, and you just bung it in the soup, and then it's really simple. It takes 2 minutes. Kids and snacks, buy smaller treats, and keep your foods, visible. So that's the other thing that's really easy to do. It can be like, well, I need it for the kids or my grandkids, and it can be very easy to switch into, well, it's just right front and center. And then thinking about, you want to remove the friction. So for those lunches on the go, these are if you look at this, so often we can go into these lunch places and we'll be so fixated on the calories, and actually you just need to look at, like, kind of think about the protein. So you were not trying at lunch to go for like a 200 calorie lunch. It's a meal, it's a proper meal. So, for most of us, this is a quick snack one. For most of us, this is an okay amount, and you've got 29 grams, 36 grams. That one's a little bit low, 11 grams of protein in those. And then this charcoal chicken pot, which I've not come across, but 27.8 grams of protein for a quick snack. So, remove the friction. If you know that you are going to need a lunch on the go because you haven't got time to make one before you go out for work, then think about in advance, okay, I've got a Pret, a Waitrose, a Marks and Spencer's food hall on the way. Go in at the beginning of the day. Don't go when you're hungry, and buy it on the way into work or whatever you've got to do. So yeah, and this works because motivation is unpredictable. It will always be unpredictable. September, you might feel really motivated. By mid-October, if you're relying on that, if not before, that motivation will wane. It will wane the minute something throws something at you that you're not expecting, and it saps your energy. Systems are predictable, those processes. You just need to build a system using things like that, that you keep tuning into. You will go off now and again because you don't build systems that you stick to in a week or two when you haven't ever done that before. But the more you kind of build a system in, much like any work or career that you've done or business that you've run, you know that if you follow the systems and the processes, it works. And it's exactly the same with your health and fitness. So, like, remove all the emotion from it, try and remove all the friction. So, examples of women in the program who have been really good at systemizing everything and not relying on motivation. So, Emma, she shows up to every session. She's not, I don't think she is here, maybe. Is she here? She normally shows up to every one of these. She puts all the workouts in her diary. She's doing the workouts, and she's doing her running for half marathon training at the moment. Always reaches out for help, always fills out her feedback form, always. And her shape has transformed because of it. And then Ingrid, who I'm sure you've heard me speak about before, got a really massively full-on job. So you can't use jobs and busyness as a reason why you can't do anything, because Ingrid is like very senior in the NHS, young child, and she's managed to fit her strength training in, her training for an ultra endurance cycling event, which was cycling to Edinburgh from London and back again in 5 days. That was what she trained for. It was cancelled because of the storm, but she did incredible 600-kilometer rides, training rides for that, training in and out of work. So anything's doable if you just structure it and put things into your diary. So yeah, clear goals, schedule your workouts, hack your environment. Data over drama, big one. Data over drama. Don't go off the boil and throw everything up into the air and think, oh, it's not working, when you actually haven't. You've got all the data there at your disposal, and you just have to work with that data, and then make sure you're eating sufficiently, not under what I've set you. So yeah, thanks for joining for that. I hope that's thrown up some thoughts for you, and something that you can take away and implement for yourself. So just lead your health and your fitness and your nutrition in exactly the same way as you've led in your career, your job. Think about clarity, structure, and just execute it. And keep coming back to those systems, and focus on that mindset around systems, not a mindset that relies on motivation, because it will wax and wane. And the more you can kind of structure those systems, the better you'll be able to get sustainable results.